special bonus episode of Women In. Let me tell you what you're listening to before I introduce my guest. Women In is a podcast that celebrates women in all walks of life and the people in their lives who are lifting them up. You will hear from all kinds of super cool people in my life, and they're going to share their stories to inspire others to support all the extraordinary women around them. This is a space to be disruptive, forward-thinking, and change agents for humankind. It is uncensored, fun, and curiosity-driven. This is what I'm passionate about, breaking down barriers for my kids' generation. It's equal parts about my guest and the places we came into each other's lives, whether it be the Kalamazoo Wings, Mindfulness Elevated, Tony Will Coaching, or you happen to be in my family and friends circle. This guest actually falls into many buckets, but she is my daughter, Chloe
Hello.
Vanderploeg. And
Hello.
let me give your bio, Chloe, even though most 17-year-olds don't have a bio, so I'm gonna make it up on the fly. Chloe, like I just mentioned, she's going to be a senior in high school at Gull Lake High School. She is 17, will be turning 18 in November, and I know she's chomping at the bit to be a legal adult.
I've been ready for that one.
And Chloe she works at the Kalamazoo Wings in the winter, and she also works at the Kalamazoo Country Club in the daycare in the summer and winter, all part of Greenleaf Hospitality Group. And we're just so proud of her, me as her mom, and we're going to talk more about that. And of course, her stepdad, Josh, and all the other amazing people in her life. So, and this is Chloe's very first podcast, I would imagine, because you're 17. So I'm honored that she's on mine. So hi, Chloe. The first question I ask my podcast guests is this: how did we meet?
Birth. I mean, I don't know. I guess that's pretty straightforward. You gave birth to me. I mean, we met in that hospital room. I don't know.
True. We did give
I mean,
birth.
I guess, yeah, I mean,
Yep,
been around you forever.
That is the correct answer. It's almost a trick question with you and your brother. And your brother was on this podcast already. So tell me, I asked your brother the same question. I'm going to ask it from your point of view too. You grew up in a household that your dad and I split up when you were a year old. So you don't remember us ever being together. Landon was 4, you were 1, and you've always been part of a blended family. And so what has that been like for you? Because for a long time you went 1 week on, 1 week off to your dad's house. And my parents are still married almost 50 years. So I always had a lot of empathy for you and your brother because I didn't know what it was like to be going back and forth, and what it was like to be in a blended family. And you've been in 3 blended families because I've been remarried twice.
3.
So what has that been like for you growing up?
Well, I definitely think I had a different experience than Landon. I wasn't around like Dad and Lisa as much. I was more around my little siblings. So where he has more of a relationship with Dad and Lisa now, I don't have that same relationship because I never did when I was a kid. And it wasn't anything to do with anything else. I just always gravitated towards you. Like when I was a kid, I just wanted to be with you all the time. And it had nothing to do really with them, to be honest, but it's just how it was. So I kind of gravitated towards my little siblings, which ended up me taking on kind of a mother role as a young child. I mean, just kind of how it ended up. And I kind of think that that's, as I thought about it, where I found my passion for kids and stuff like that too. But there's been a lot. I don't know. I mean, I've had 2 stepdads. I've had a dad. It's been definitely interesting being a girl in that experience, I think, because growing up, having multiple father figures in your life that haven't always been the best father figure is an interesting experience. Because I always tell people, yeah, I've had 3 father figures, 3 dads, but only 1 or 2 of them have really resonated with me. So it's you think having 3, potential father figures in your life, I'd be great, I'd be set up, but it hasn't always been that way.
Yeah, and I would actually add a 4th in there, your grandpa.
Papa.
Right,
yeah.
My dad.
My papa. So 4, yeah, 4 father figures, and I'd say the only 2 that have probably benefited me in a great way have been my grandpa and Josh.
Yeah, I didn't want to ask a leading question on where Josh fit into that, but You came to live with us full time
Oh,
in 2020,
for sure.
and he is definitely a solid father figure for you.
Absolutely. I am a very stubborn girl, and I am willing to admit that to the day I die. I don't like to admit when I'm wrong. I don't like to tell people when I'm struggling. I don't like to do any of that. And I get that from you, and I know that I get that from you because we talk about it constantly. And so when Josh kind of came into my life, I was already kind of in that mindset where I was shut off to the idea of it. It wasn't anything against you or Josh or like anything. It was like previous things that I had known that like had happened with like my dad or with Mike or like things like that, that in my brain I was like, I'm not giving this another go. I don't care. Like, I'm 13. I'm old enough. Like, in my brain in that moment, I was like, I don't need another father figure. And that's what I told everybody. I was like, I don't want another father figure. I don't need a dad. I don't want a dad. Like, I've never had one. Like, that's kind of what I told people. And it had nothing to do with Josh, which I think is where things kind of got lost in translation in the beginnings of our relationship. But I think as the years have gone on, we've kind of started to like chit chat more. You know, we're talking a little more like, and those of people who know Josh personally, he tends to be like more closed off. Like, we touch base, right? Like, that's what we do, and that's how it works. But it's like, it wasn't always that way, and it was my fault at the beginning. And I will say that because I remember telling you when I was 13, I was like, he's not my dad, don't say that, and stuff like that. And I was really defensive about it, but I realized that those were like internal problems that I had. I mean, through a lot of therapy and a lot of talking about it and like working through my own brain struggles and things that I've been through, I was rejecting the possibility because the previous ones I had weren't good, like they just weren't. And that's how it was. They weren't good to me. I was never like their daughter. I never felt like I had a dad. So when he came in when I was 13, I was like, I've never really, had one. Why do I need one?
Yeah. Well, no, you told us. You told us both that. And
yeah, and I was very open. I was very straightforward. Like I've always said my opinion. I've always said what I think. That's a big difference between me and Landon, my siblings. I kind of have a loud mouth. Like I can't help it either. I just when it happens, it happens.
well, no, and that's okay. And the reality was we understood as best we could where you were coming from, and we also know, and to this day, with all three of you, and Grace will be on the podcast next month, but that these are your life experiences, and we haven't shared those because Josh's parents have been married almost as long as my parents have been married, and what you, Grace, and Landon share in common, we don't experience. So we have empathy for that. And we knew that time would tell. And we also know that at 13, Landon was 15 at the time, and Grace was 16 at the time.
Yeah.
That you guys are in a space in your life where you think you know, but you don't really know because you're still growing up.
I'm finally at the point where I'm like, I don't know, and I don't want to know, and you know what? I'll know when I know. Like, I'm 17, I'm not gonna know.
Yeah.
Just trying to get there. At this point in my life, it's like a day-by-day thing, and that's completely right, because when me and Landon moved in with you guys full time, I kind of was in still like a fight or flight headspace, if that makes sense, because a lot of my time at Dad's house was geared towards taking care of Ashton and Olivia. It wasn't about me. It wasn't like about my well-being and things like that. So I was really juggling middle school volleyball, playing volleyball, playing sports, I was going to youth group church like every single day, and taking care of two children, making sure they got on the bus, making sure they ate, making sure they were sleeping, getting dressed. Like, it was a lot. And when I first moved over there and then Josh came in, it felt like a lot. And I think that I didn't realize it then because, of course, I'm 13. I'm going through puberty. Like, I don't know what's going on. I should have never been put in that place in the first place. So I was still I was in a really negative area of my life that I wasn't able to articulate because of, experiences that I didn't know that weren't normal. Uh-huh. Like, I didn't know it wasn't normal for a long time. I didn't know it wasn't normal that I was taking care of my little siblings. And that happens a lot in my generation, to be honest, that I've noticed. A lot of people that I connect with and have really, really good friendships with are very trauma-based and things like that. And it's sad, but at the same time, it's like, I'm glad that, we can connect on these things as well.
Yeah, because I'm really open-minded, and I recognize that you guys have, through my decisions, you guys have been in different situations, and that like I said, I'm not going to understand, but I want to understand your perspective. Also, while parenting you, and one of the things you didn't list in that trauma time, though, but was traumatic for the world, was the pandemic that was going on at the exact same time
Right.
as everything you just mentioned. So it was a lot. That's a lot for a 13-year-old to contend with, and then we're, as parents, we're navigating through technology too, because we didn't grow up with the same technology that you
Yeah.
guys have, and that has definitely changed the hardwiring to your brain, which I know you hear me talk a lot about because of the work I do, but in all areas. So
Definitely.
you you mentioned.
Well, and I think that our generation was like the first like generation to get like phones like as kids and things like that, which I have always said is like, it's from working in childcare, you can tell like the difference. Like when we were kids, we, at least for a while, we're playing outside and like doing all that, but these kids that are coming into the country club now, I have like all these like screen time, so when we're in there, we do our best to like, let's go outside, let's do this, but like screens and like technology, the more that I work in childcare, the more I work anywhere, I'm like, wow, like it progressively, from when I got my first phone when I was 13, I know kids now that have phones when they're like 4.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even know how to use a phone when I was 4.
Well, yeah, because I didn't have. I mean, I had a phone, but it wasn't a smartphone because they hadn't been developed yet. But you're
Right.
right.
It was like a flip
Yeah, the
phone.
research is showing kids are getting phones now, smartphones at the age of 4 or 5. And you had said something that was really poignant, and which is when you were taking care of your younger siblings, and that kind of it kind of like lit your fire in terms of what you want to do as you grow up,
Yeah.
and you're already in childcare. So what is your goals right now as you are going into your senior year and you're taking some college classes already while you're in high school still? So what is it at this point that you're thinking you want to do when you're an adult?
So I've always kind of known what I wanted to do my entire life, and we've known that. I mean, we had a conversation a couple weeks ago about it, and I've always wanted to be in childcare, and it might be like a genetic thing. My grandma was an elementary school teacher, and we talk about it all the time, but I didn't realize until maybe freshman, sophomore year when I started working in the kids' room that it, like, a couple experiences I went through in elementary school weren't the greatest with teachers, and then like what I had to do for my little siblings to just make sure like they were okay and like I was also okay, it really kind of lit a fire under my ass to be like, I never want to see another kid have to go through this. Giving them a safe space is everything I've ever wanted to do. Mm-hmm. And I think I realized that kind of in middle school, where I was like, I was never told to take on this role for my little siblings. No one ever looked at me and said, you need to take care of them. They're your responsibility. Like, these are your children now. No one ever looked at me and did that. I did that because I saw my little siblings struggling a little bit.
Yeah.
So like it was truly like all the experiences that led up to it. But I want to go into elementary school. I want to be a first or second grade teacher, and I want to minor in special education. That's all I've ever wanted to do. And I guess, I don't know if you agree with this, but I've kind of like planned out like pretty much all of college for myself, and like since like junior year, like beginning of junior year, I was like, this is what I'm doing.
Yeah, you've been.
And we've had conversations about it, right? Where I'm like, I want to go to school here. I'm staying here. I want to get my bachelor's in early education and my minor in special education. I'm still going to be doing my internship, like, and that's going to take me through college, and that's what I want to do. And like, I think for myself, which I've had conversations with my friends about this, a lot of my friends don't know what they want to do with the rest of their life. So it's like, it's a really nice feeling, and like a good feeling to know that like, this is not only my passion, but something that I know that I can do for the rest of my life. Yeah. Like when I walk into that kids room and I see those kids, it makes my day brighter. It makes me happier. When I walk into the arena, to my booth, it's like, this is my area. Like, this is my place. This is my booth. So it's like, when I felt those moments, I was like, yes, this is what I want to do. This is what brings me my joy and my happiness, and like things like that.
Yeah, no,
I think it may have been the bad experiences that got me there, but over the years, I've been like, well, if I never went through that, then I would never have had the passion for these little kids that I do today.
Yeah.
I mean, they call me Miss Chloe. I'm Miss Chloe. Like, they love me. I'm Miss Chloe at the country club. Like, I throw these events. I just did an event recently. We did an Olympic event, and I came up with a craft for it, and, like, the kids loved it. And we do, like, these bounce houses and these water shows and stuff like that. And it's like, oh, it's just a great environment to it. I don't know how to explain it, like, in full multitude. Like, it's just both the jobs that I have, like, are just amazing, and I know how many people hate what they do with their life.
I think that's great that you are so passionate, you know what you want to do, and you articulated it really well. So, all right, so you talked about Gammy, or your grandmother, which is my mom. She was a
Yeah.
elementary school teacher and also specialized in special ed. Who are the other women in your life? You obviously have talked about me, that have helped shaped you to become what you are thus far as you move into your senior year of high school?
I would have never wanted to become a teacher if it was not for Miss St. Arnold, and it may have not been a positive way, but to this day, I kind of love her for it now, as much as it sounds bad. I had like a pretty bad experience in elementary school where she hired like a tutor and said like I couldn't spell, and made the tutor do my spelling test for me. And like later on, like tried to like get me diagnosed with like things like ADHD, and like she thought something was wrong with me, which is it's okay to have a concern, but she took it too far, right? Like there was a point, and it got past the point, and I vividly remember that to this day. I remember those conversations. I remember being the only kid in class having like a special chair because I couldn't sit still. So it's like some of those negative moments that I'm like, I love you for that now. Like, I hated it then, but like, you gave me the fire under my butt to be like, I'm never gonna do that to a child.
Yeah,
Never, ever.
Yeah, you bring up something.
Or like,
Well, you bring up something good, which is her intention was in the right place. It was just the execution.
yeah, and I've always thought that like these some of these experiences that I went through in school, or like kids do. As someone who works in childcare now, we are always trying to do what's best for the kid. And I know that. And elementary school teachers, high school teachers, they're always trying to do what's best for you. Sometimes the execution just doesn't get there. And sometimes the kid will have, like trauma or experiences from it that you didn't want to happen to them. That's just how it works. Like, it's not to be negative towards her. It's not to like be like, I don't like you. It's truly just like that experience to me in my brain is one of the key moments I remember being like, this is what I want to do because I want to put change into the system.
Yeah. Do you, so you mentioned your teacher and Gammy, and so what has it been like for you to watch me in my career in pro hockey or the businesses I've launched? Because one of the things that I've always grappled with is how much I try to balance work life. I'm not very good at it, and I'm aware of that. But a lot of what I said, and you were there when I did my first, when I did a lot of my triathlons. You were there when I crossed the finish line at my first Ironman. So you've been a part of a lot of these experiences in my life. And what I've told myself as a hardworking mom is that they're watching me. And I'm going to be a good role model. So, what has it been like for you? I guess is my thesis true?
It is. I do have like a controversial. I guess it's really not controversial. I think a lot of kids feel this way with parents that they kind of work for. When I went into Wings when I was 15, I felt like I didn't have like my own area. Like, I felt like I was kind of just like Tony's daughter. Like, this is Tony's daughter. That's what I've been known as my whole life, right? And that's not a negative notation in any way whatsoever. Like, and I love being branded as your daughter. Like, it's great because you do all the amazing things. But I think as a 15-year-old, being insecure and like, I wanted to have my own area. Yeah. So when I stepped into my booth when I was 16 and it was my second season, and people were talking to me, and I have friends, and like some of these season ticket holders I have relationships with, which you don't, which is, well, great, whatever, Like I know that this podcast is supposed to be about women, but truly the guys in the office and like Wings is like a safe place for me, and it's always been that way for me. And it's like when I started working there, it only got better. Like I got to be employee of the month last season, which was awesome. I got to like people come and talk to me in my booth just to have a conversation, just to be like, hey, how are you feeling, how are you doing? Like I'm not Tony's daughter anymore. I'm Chloe. Like, hey Chloe, how you doing? Like it's the first time I've ever been Chloe, if that makes sense. And it's like, it feels good to be able to be Chloe and not Tony's daughter sometimes.
Yeah, what you're talking,
because as much as we don't like to, you know, say it, everybody really knows you. Like, I'll talk to like someone I've never talked to before, and they'll be like, oh, who's your mom? And I'm like, Tony. And they're like, oh, my parents know her.
Yeah. Yeah, and I wondered about that, because what you're talking about there is identity. You want your own identity outside of me, and I can imagine that would be at times it's beneficial, right? You have these great jobs,
absolutely,
but
don't get me wrong, I pulled yeah,
but in the same sense, it's like, how do you figure your way out? Like, you hit on something really important, which when you're coming of age and you're 15, 16 years old, it's their self-esteem that you're working through. And I remember being that age, and my mom was not, my mom was a school teacher, and that's an admirable job, but it's not like I was living in her shadow, because I didn't want to be a school teacher, you know, so she was doing her thing.
Right.
I was doing mine, and that was okay. But what you've been seeking and working on, and will continue to, is your own identity outside of me.
For sure. And the country club was the first, like, besides my booth, right? Because my booth was like, I started working at K-Wings when I was 15, and then started working at the country club when I was 16. So when I went into the country club, it was the first place, and I'm not even joking, that some people didn't know your name. And I was like, okay, I can make a name for myself here. Like, I can be just Miss Chloe. I can be Chloe. And that's what I am to this day. And for myself, I think I have a good reputation there. But, like, it's just sometimes it's a beautiful thing to be able to be yourself. If that makes sense. Like,
I think, and that's
my whole, since I was 8 years old, I've always been like your daughter. You know, the K-Wings games are fun, they're amazing and things, but it's always been this feeling where it's like, okay, my mom's the general manager. Like, you need to be on your A game. You can't be doing this. You can't be doing that. Like, and it's things like that. And then it's like, you know, I finally get my booth. I finally get to have this job in childcare that I've always wanted. And it was the first time I actually felt like myself, because I've always been independent, and we know that. I've always been an independent kid. I get that from you. But to feel like your own person is almost a different type of feeling than just, you know, working for you, working at K-Wings. Like, you know, I go to K-Wings games.
Well, I want to clear a couple things up. Number one, the first rule I said was, you don't report to me. And you don't. You report to the game operations.
Oh, I don't. Nope. I report to Clay. I love Clay.
I know. I just want everyone to know I would never do that, just because it would make no sense.
No.
But
she is my boss's boss, and I don't even talk to her about most.
Yeah, because if you come home, I just say, take it to Clay, take it to Clay, take it to Clay, because I'm not.
Yeah, no, that's it. Or
Now tell her, you keep saying booth. We know what your booth is, you and I do, but podcast listeners may not know. They're like, booth of what? What is she selling? So what booth are you talking about?
So I work in guest relations at Wings Event Center.
Yeah, and it's a booth.
So my job over there is, yeah, it's a like an indented like booth area at the event center over there. So I kind of sit in there. I actually am very privileged, because I've been there since I was 15, to be able to do both intern jobs. And that kind of started happening last season, where I, you know, got more of a role going into it. I mean, coming into K-Wings, I kind of have, like, my mom, you sat me down on the couch, and I'm not even gonna lie, that day I did not give two craps about this job. You were like, do you want to work in guest relations? And I was like, sure, you know, money. Like, great. Like, K-Wings, I've been going to these games since I was 8. Cool. And I didn't know what was going to come out of that. This is my 3rd season going in. I'm not even 18. I'm the youngest intern that's ever worked there, and I am doing more, and I know more than a lot of people, and that's truly a gift because of the things and opportunities I've been given there. I not only get to work in my booth, but sometimes now I get to do games, or I get to help, you know, with handing out things, or I get to do special, like, other things. So I'm also on the other side of the intern staff. For those of you who don't know, there's kind of like two sides of the intern staff. There's the ones that run around and do the games and play everything, and there's me and my booth.
Yeah.
Which I love my booth, don't get me wrong, but as I came into my second season, I kind of was like, maybe I could do a little more. And Clay was amazing about giving me those opportunities. And it's just been like it's not only the women in my life. And I know this podcast is about the women, but I have to give a shout out to all my uncles over there. They have been a huge part of my life. Like, me and Clay started out working together as interns, and now he's my boss, and like it's amazing. And I've known Joe. How long have I known Joe? Since I was like 8, since I was like this tall. Yep. Like, some of those guys in there have truly molded me and raised me to who I am today. So I'd shout out to the boys out there too.
Yeah, I mean, and the reality is that's why I have men on this podcast too, because, well, A, they came from women, and B, it's all about the people, regardless of gender. But I like to talk about how we lift women up. And so one of the things you were talking about, Chloe, was this invisible pressure that is on you because you're my daughter and people know that. And then that pressure gets lifted off when you go to your other job at the country club and you feel like you have your own identity. And then, you know, there's pressures about being a high school student. And then there's pressures about what about after high school, because you're going to be continuing on with college, and there's a lot of pressures, right? And Josh and I expect that you pay for your own gas and that you pay for your own Taco Bell or Panera or whatever. And so,
all the fun things.
Yeah, how do you handle like navigating those pressures as you're 17, rounding the corner in 18?
Therapy, crying, and a whole lot of gossip and chit chat and spilling my emotions out. Like, I'm going to be so straightforward here. I cry more than anybody I know. And it's not, I cry about good things. I cry about bad things. I cry about amazing things. I cry about stressful things. I am a sensitive crier, and it's just how I get through things. Or I'll come and talk to you, or I'll go and talk to one of my friends. I mean, I don't know if there is an exact way to get through the pressures of being a teenager, you know? I mean, we all make mistakes. We all like do stupid stuff to get through it, but it's kind of who the person you become out of it. And that's kind of what I always have said about the experiences that people go through. Like, you don't get a pass, or you can become a better person out of anything you go through. Yeah. And you can get through these pressures. You can get, like, if you truly want to get through it, you can. And that's what I've always said is, like, when I started working at Wings, I knew it was going to be hard for me. I knew that it was going to be hard to make a name for myself and not just be Tony's daughter. And I still got my ass up and I did it. And now I'm Chloe. And when I went to that country club, I knew when I went in there, I was a new girl and that I was going to have to prove myself as a childcare worker. Working in childcare is a very, like, tiptoe way. Like, you have to be very good with the children, but also very good with your coworkers, because you have to work together for those children. And, like, sometimes you're not going to get along with everybody you work with. So it's very like interesting. So I as much as I don't admit it, I kind of had to work my ass off to become Chloe.
Yeah, no, I think I like that. Therapy, crying, and gossiping. I think that's going to be the
I am the most basic teenage girl you're ever going to meet. I cry, I eat a bunch of Taco Bell, and I go to work. Like, that's all I do. I'm literally you talked about work-life balance. I don't think work-life balance works in our family ever. I don't think it ever has. I've been working since I was 15 years old. I mean, prior to that, right, too, because I was babysitting, and I still babysit. I've been babysitting since probably, 13? And then I started working when I was 15, got my second job when I was 16, never stopped.
I know you're a very hard worker, but I title each one of these podcasts, and that's going to be the title of yours. It's going to be Therapy, Crying, and Gossiping. And I love that because I think, and therapy is so important, and it gets a stigma, right? Because
absolutely,
and not so much in your generation, but in mine, it got a huge stigma. Certainly, your grandparents' generation. And Papa's 81.
Oh, I agree.
So the stigma is real, but in your generation, you guys are very open mindset, and therapy has been instrumental in your life.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, me and Landon have been going to therapy since we were kids, and not even for bad purposes, just to be able to talk to someone that isn't in your family or isn't just to be able to talk to someone. I mean, to all my friends, coaching, therapy, whatever works for you, because I've discovered over the past, year or so of therapy that therapy doesn't work for me. I don't like therapy. I don't like talking to someone that doesn't resonate what I've been through, and that's how I work, and that's completely okay. But therapy works for so many people. To me, it's just about talking to someone that isn't going to judge you or talk to somebody else about what you said. Because truly in this world, you don't know if you say something to someone, it could be said to someone else.
Yep. Yep.
So I would never be who I am and be able to talk about my emotions the way I can now if I never went through therapy. I'm only emotionally intelligent and able to talk about what I'm going through and how I feel and things like that because of therapy.
Yeah. Yeah. But so on one end, you got, what I like to say is you got out of it at this stage of your life what you were supposed to. And for now, it's not what you are seeking to help you continue to grow.
For sure.
But that's okay. And you might come back.
But when I was 13, absolutely. When I was 13 and when I was 14, therapy was exactly what I needed in that moment.
Yep.
And it wasn't even for negative things. It was truly, most of the time I went in there and I just talked about what was going on at school. Or I talked about, what I was doing in volleyball. It was literally just being able to have a conversation with someone for an hour that doesn't stress you out or doesn't make you feel like, it's going to go somewhere else, benefits you immensely in the long run.
So at the beginning of the podcast, I did an intro where I talk about the why I launched this podcast, and it's right up in that first sentence, which is for my kids and the next generation. So when you see me doing this work for women in sports or women in entrepreneurship and just all the different areas, women living alcohol free or anyone living alcohol free or that, and in that whole genre of my work, what does that mean to you when you see me and hear me doing this type of work for you guys?
I think that I have a different perspective than a lot of people because I work in both areas. I work with primarily women over at the country club, and I work with primarily men over at Wings. And in both areas, I've seen change. And not just because of you, but because of so many women and things like that. But it's from when I was a kid to now, even when I was 8, seeing you walk in there, I mean, it wasn't great. Still, a lot of people still don't like you and don't like what you're doing. But to see the Rainbow Ice game, to see the hockey is for her, that would have never been a thing 10 years ago. That would have never even been a thought on anybody's mind. Me working in that booth, it would have never been a thought. I could have gotten a job at the country club, right, in childcare, but maybe I wouldn't have gotten on that intern team. So it's you doing this for me and for other people, as much as I don't sound sincere saying it, it means a lot more than make you think. And it's always been that way in my mindset because I've seen some people who have tried to personally derail me and personally derail women because of our gender. And to see people that are no, F you, sit down and shut up. It's a beautiful thing. It's about time.
No, it's true. I mean, it's all true. So what's important? I asked your brother this question as we start to get to the end of the podcast. What's important to your generation?
To my generation, what's important? To me, for my side of the generation?
Yeah, you. Yeah, just what's important to you. I mean, this doesn't have to be, it could be therapy, crying, and gossiping. I don't know.
Well, I don't know. I mean, the first thing that kind of comes to mind is making sure that the next generation is happy and okay, because that's just kind of where my mind goes. That's how I think I can't help it. I think as a child care worker, I always do. I do it at Wings too. I hang out with this little girl named Charlie. She comes and sits in my booth with me. I don't know. For me, it's always been, maybe we aren't going to be perfect this time, but we can always be better next time.
Yeah.
And we can always, when I go into being a mother, or when I go into being a teacher of these things that are on the forefront of my next, thing in life or whatever, I want to be that better person for it. And I know that there's so many other girls that do too, because I have constant conversations with the girls that I work with and the people that I work with. And the only thing that I can tell you is that childcare workers are birthed from two things: traumatic experiences or a beautiful family. And all they want to do is make those kids feel like they're amazing, beautiful human beings. And that's kind of what I think of when I'm like, what's important to me in my generation and this generation? Making sure that the next one doesn't have to go through the bad things that we did.
Yeah. No,
or you did, or our grandparents did.
That's really beautiful. Well, if you guys, because Chloe's still a minor, so usually I ask where people can find you, but I'm not going to put that out there. If you want to get in touch with Chloe, you come through her mama. So you come to me.
You can contact Tony Will.
Yeah, you contact me, but and this will not be the last time you're on my podcast. I think over the years, depending on however long this passion project goes on, I will have you come on and share where you're at in this stage of your life that you're in, because your generation and you being my daughter is certainly, there's so much value there, and I want to continue to learn from you. So and it's just an honor to be your mom, and I love you so much.
I love you more.
All right. For anyone looking to get in touch with me, you can find me at kwings.com, mindfulnesselevated.com, TonyWillCoaching.com. I'm on Facebook at Tony Lentini Will, as well as LinkedIn. And then I'm on Instagram at I'm Tony Will. I'm not on TikTok or X or anything like that. But those are the places you can find me. And until next time.
You should make a TikTok. You would go viral.
Maybe I will. Who knows, Chloe? You'll have to teach me. All right. Until next time.